happens when things break? After you've done the work, after you've shifted your perspective, after you've taken your thoughts captive, after you've started realigning your life with purpose? Because if we're honest, broken seasons, well, they don't magically disappear. And sometimes those seasons reveal something about your leadership that you couldn't see any other way. Plans still fall apart. Expectations still change. Momentum still gets interrupted. And when that happens, the real question isn't, will things break? The bigger question is, what do you do next? Hi, friend. I'm Christina. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and things still fall apart, well, this episode is for you. And if you've been walking this series with me, or if you've just landed here in what feels like a really hard season, I am so glad that you're here. This is the place where we figure out how to live and to lead from who we actually are, not from the pressure of who everyone else needs us to be. And today, we're closing out the series, When Things Break, choosing perspective, truth, and purpose. In every season of life, leadership, or transition, things break. Plans, expectations, relationships, and sometimes what breaks isn't visible. It's internal. Well, this series has been about choosing perspective, anchoring ourselves in truth, and learning to live and lead from purpose when things don't quite go as planned. Today, we're bringing all of it together. And if you stay with me in this episode, you will walk away with 3 leadership keys that will help you lead with hope, even when life feels uncertain. So today, we're going to talk about why broken seasons reveal what you're really building on, why learning to trust the story God is writing changes how you lead, and finally, how purpose gives you the North Star for all your next steps. Because again, when your life is built on purpose, even when things break, the story isn't over. There is still hope. So if you've been walking through this series with me, we've been building this one step at a time. First, we talked about choosing perspective when things break. Then we talked about that internal weight toxic thoughts create and why so many leaders are exhausted by the stories that are playing in their minds. After that, we talked about taking our thoughts captive and reclaiming authority over what gets to lead us. And in the last episode, we talked about alignment, how clarity about your purpose changes the way that you lead. So today, we're going to tie all of that together, because broken seasons, they don't just test leaders. They reveal what kind of leader we're becoming. You might remember at the beginning of this series, I shared about the winter storm that came through our area. Literally everything was covered in inches of ice. Tree branches were bent so low that they touched the ground underneath the weight of it all. A lot of them snapped. A lot of fences were damaged, and absolutely everywhere that you looked, there was evidence of the storm. Broken limbs were hanging from trees. They carpeted the ground. And every step that you took, you could hear branches cracking under your feet, and a lot of them above your head. And in that moment, it just felt so heavy and scary, like the storm had left its fingerprints everywhere, not just physically, but emotionally, because broken things always do. But now it's spring. That ice is long gone, and the branches, that held have lifted again. The trees are blooming. There are new leaves and new life, and growth is pushing forward in places that once looked damaged. Even in areas where limbs broke, the trees didn't stop growing. Standing there looking at those trees again, something else became clear to me. Storms reveal things. They reveal what was strong and what only looked strong. They reveal which branches were strong enough to hold. They reveal which ones were already weak before the storm ever arrived. And leadership seasons are like that too. Because when things break in our lives, it's what's underneath that gets exposed. Our assumptions, our motivations, our foundations, and that, friend, is what leads us to the first leadership key for today. Because when storms reveal things, they reveal our foundation. Broken seasons don't just interrupt your plans, they expose what you've been building on. When something breaks, a plan, a relationship, a direction you thought would work, it reveals what your leadership has been resting on. And for a lot of us, we don't realize what we've been building on until something shakes it. Sometimes it's approval. Other times it might be performance. Sometimes it's just control, or maybe it's even the pressure to prove that we're capable enough. But the problem with those foundations is simple. They're unstable. They depend on circumstances. They depend on outcomes, and they depend on what other people think. And when those things shift, and they always do, everything starts to feel uncertain. Well, I realized that in a very personal way. Have you ever had someone ask you a question that suddenly exposes your foundation? I did. A person I respected pointed out something in me that literally stopped me in my tracks. And when someone you respect says something like that, it makes you pause. They told me that my tendency to please people wasn't actually helping anyone. It wasn't helping me either. At first, that was really hard to hear because I had convinced myself that it was a strength. I told myself I was being nice. I told myself that I was being supportive to the other person. I told myself that I was being helpful to them. But underneath it, my leadership had been resting on something unstable. Because, friend, there is a difference between being nice and being kind. Being nice often protects you. Being kind actually serves the other person. Nice just avoids tension, but kind speaks the truth. Nice keeps you comfortable, but kind helps people grow. And when your leadership is built on pleasing people, you end up letting other people's opinions determine your direction. And that's not actually helpful, nice, or supportive, because opinions change constantly. What someone applauds today, they may question tomorrow. And if your leadership is anchored to approval, well, your direction will always feel unstable. We cannot build our worth, our identity, our purpose, our value on something that is unstable. That moment exposed something in me. It showed me that part of my leadership had been built on approval instead of purpose. And when something exposes your foundation, it gives you a choice. You can ignore it, or you can rebuild. Broken seasons are often the moments that give us that opportunity, not to collapse, but to realign, to shift what we're building on. Because purpose is the foundation that doesn't move when circumstances do. And when we begin building our lives on purpose instead of approval, something powerful happens. We stop chasing stability and we start living from it. And that leads us to our second leadership key: trusting the story that God is writing. When you start rebuilding your foundation, something else becomes possible. If your life is built on purpose, you can trust the story, even when the chapter that you're in feels uncertain. And this reminds me of something I learned while watching my kids learn to swim. At first, they were terrified. They had a death grip on the edge of the pool. I'm telling you, it was like they had superhuman strength holding on to that rim. They were not letting go. And when they finally did, they moved that chokehold from the pool to my neck. They clung to me like their life depended on it, which to them, it did. You see, one of the first lessons a lifeguard teaches you isn't how to move, it's how to float. And floating, well, it feels counterintuitive at first. Like your instinct, just like my kids, is to fight the water. You tense your body and you kick and you try to stay in control because your brain is telling you that if you relax, you'll sink. But the lifeguard keeps saying the same thing. It's the same thing that I told my kids. Lean back. Relax. You're going to be okay. Trust the water. It usually takes 3 or 4 days before kids trust the words and the water enough to finally relax. And the moment you finally stop fighting it, the moment my kids finally stopped fighting it, something surprising happens. The water, it actually holds you. You realize you were exhausting yourself trying to control something that was already designed to hold you up. And I realized something watching that process. Learning to swim isn't really about movement first, it's about trust. Leadership seasons can feel exactly the same. When things break, our instinct is to grab on to whatever feels safe. Control, approval, certainty, we hold on tight because letting go feels risky. But when your life is built on purpose, something just shifts. You begin to trust the one who called you. You begin to trust the story that he's writing, not because every moment feels easy, but because the author is faithful. And that's exactly what we're reminded of in 1 Peter 5:10. After you have suffered a little while, he himself will restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. Not just restored, but strengthened, steadier than before. Sometimes the strength that God is building in us through seasons is where we stop fighting the water and we start trusting the one who holds us. And when you learn to trust the story that God is writing, you lead differently. You lead with steadiness, with faith, with hope. And that brings us to our third leadership key. Purpose becomes your North Star. And when purpose becomes your North Star, again, you get that shift. You stop reacting to every change around you and you start navigating with clarity. Because instead of asking, what should I do? You begin asking a different question. Is this aligned with my purpose? That one question becomes a powerful filter for every decision. It helps you determine where your energy should go. It helps you decide what deserves your time. And it helps you to recognize what isn't yours to carry. So when opportunities come your way, you can ask, is this aligned? When pressure shows up, you ask, is this aligned? And when you're standing at a crossroads, wondering what comes next, you ask, is this aligned with the purpose God has placed in me? And that's why discovering your purpose matters so much. Because purpose doesn't just help you survive broken seasons, it becomes the compass that guides every step forward. So many of us don't lack ability. We lack clarity. Clarity around the way that we were created to lead and to serve. And clarity changes everything. It changes how you make decisions. It changes what you pursue. It changes what you release. And it changes how you lead when things break. I want to ask you something before we move on. Have you ever sat in a broken season and wondered not just when does this end, but am I even doing the right things for the right reasons? Well, it's that question that led me to the Purpose Factor framework, not as a solution, but as a mirror. It showed me what I was actually building on, and it gave me language for something I'd known about myself. I just couldn't name it. So if you're in that place, the link is in the description. You can take the Purpose Factor assessment when you're ready, because once you clearly see your purpose, you can start building your leadership on it. And when you do, everything begins to align. One of the things that I've learned walking with leaders through seasons like this is that broken moments often bring clarity. They make us stop and ask questions we didn't ask before. It's questions like, why does this feel so heavy? Why does leadership feel harder than it should? And sometimes the deeper question becomes, am I actually leading in alignment with how I was designed? Because when leaders discover how they are uniquely wired to help others, something powerful happens. Decisions become clearer, energy returns, direction becomes steadier. And that's one of the reasons that I love helping people explore their purpose through the Purpose Factor framework, which helps individuals understand how their strengths, passions, and experiences combine into the unique way that they help others. When that clarity shows up, leadership begins to feel lighter, not just because life suddenly gets easier, but because you're no longer trying to lead in a way that you were never designed to lead. So friend, if this series has stirred something in you and you're starting to wonder how your own story, strengths, and leadership all fit together, I created a free guide to help you begin exploring that. It's called the Leadership Alignment Starter Guide. Inside it are a few simple reflection exercises to help you start identifying the moments when you feel most fulfilled, the strengths that you naturally bring to others, and why clarity about your purpose changes how you lead. You can download it in the description below. And if you want to go deeper after that, you can also take the Purpose Factor assessment. It helps so many leaders finally put words to the way that they're uniquely designed to help others. It's how it helped me. And if these conversations about leadership, purpose, and mindset are helpful for you, I would love to have you here Each week, we talk about how to lead and live with clarity instead of pressure. So if that's something you need in this season, you can subscribe and join me right here. So let's bring this series full circle. Just like those trees, after the storm, when things break, we choose perspective. We anchor ourselves in truth. We take our thoughts captive, and friend, we begin living from purpose. Because when your life is built on purpose, broken seasons don't destroy you. They refine you. And just like those trees after the storm, new growth, new strength, new life, and a stronger foundation than before. Because storms don't get the final word. Because the question isn't whether you have a purpose. You were created with it. The question is whether you're leading from it. When things break, purpose reminds you that the story isn't over. There is restoration. There is hope.